everybody, welcome to Langer at the Mic. I'm Mike Langer. I'm going to freestyle this video a little bit just because today is Thursday at the time of this recording, which is essentially my Tuesday, which means things get really busy for me, but still want to make a little video, an idea that I had this week. So here we go. And I know there's first round NHL playoff action going on, of course, but this is a Montreal Canadiens channel, so we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens, okay? But on the subject of the Stanley Cup playoffs, I want to talk about the four biggest organizational needs for the Montreal Canadiens right now. The four most dire needs, not only for the Montreal Canadiens on their NHL roster, but also question marks in terms of what they have in their prospect system. The fourth biggest organizational need for the Habs right now is depth at center. And it's almost as if you let one of the best defensive centers in the NHL and Philip Deneau walk in free agency and then allow Jesperi Kotkaniemi to get signed to an offer sheet. You let them go, and now all of a sudden the Canadiens are back at square one where they need depth at center. And that's why I ironically chose Jesperi Kotkaniemi doing the 4 symbol during the Stanley Cup playoffs back in 2021 for this video. But whatever, that's in the past. Marc Bergevin is gone. A new era is here with Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, of course. So I'm going to pull up the organizational depth chart for the Montreal Canadiens at forward right now. These are guys that they currently have under contract, both at the NHL and AHL levels. I excluded pending UFAs, included pending RFAs, except for Gurianov. So anyways, what we're getting at here in terms of their center position is that they have, assuming everyone's fully healthy, they have 3 NHL-bodied centermen, or capable NHLers at center, in Nick Suzuki, Christian Dvorak, and Jake Evans. But of course, you need 4 on any given night in the National Hockey League. Also, you can see I'm putting Kirby Dach on the wing here because, in my opinion, he should be playing on the wing. So I guess this is my opinionated organizational depth chart. But the good news, at least for the Montreal Canadiens, is that at least if you look in their pipeline between Owen Beck, perhaps Riley Kidney, perhaps Jan Mysak, at least there are bodies, there are young players that the Canadiens have in their prospect system down the pipeline that can play center, which is why I have this as the number 4 need. But of course, there are a ton of questions that still remain. You know, Owen Beck was just drafted last year. Riley Kidney was just drafted in 2021. Jan Mysak also just barely 3 or 4 years into his pro career since being drafted. So a lot still to prove for the young bodies that the Montreal Canadiens have in their prospect system at center. I think as of right now, assuming, again, no one gets traded, I think Owen Beck is the most likely to make an impact at center and the most likely to stay at center because, of course, Kidney and Mysak can move to the wing if they can't handle the responsibilities of playing every night at center and at the pro level, whether it be the AHL or the NHL. But Owen Beck, from what I've read, I know just he's really good at taking faceoffs. He's really defensively responsible. Of course, he's having a great offensive season in the OHL, but I think when it comes to his game translating to the NHL, it's going to come down to him being defensively responsible, being great at faceoffs, which is what's going to make him a tremendously valuable asset to the Canadiens' bottom 6. And of course, the Montreal Canadiens are guaranteed to be picking in the top 7 in this year's upcoming draft, likely the top 5, maybe even the top 2, which means the Habs will have plenty of opportunities to bring in more high-end talent at center, even if it's not in their organization right now. And they could also, who knows, maybe even go out and acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois, which will obviously be a huge boost to what they have at center right now in the NHL and put that much less pressure on their young prospects that are currently playing center. The third biggest and most dire organizational need for the Montreal Canadiens right now, in my opinion, is goaltending. And I was debating on whether I should put this at number 3 or number 2. You'll see why in a little bit, but I chose number 3 because Sam Montembeault really stepped up this year. Jake Allen, we know what he is. He's capable of, as I mentioned in previous videos, he's more than capable of playing really well for several stretches throughout the season, but ultimately his body wears down, the workload gets to him, and he starts getting injured, and his play really suffers as a result. Whereas Sam Montembeault, I'm really curious to see if he could be, maybe not Carey Price, no one could be Carey Price, let's be real, and not many out there can be Andrei Vasilevsky or Igor Shesterkin, but I'm really curious to see what the Canadiens have in Sam Montembeault, and I'm really curious to see how he will play at the World Cup this upcoming in the next few weeks. But yeah, just with Sam Montembeault, if he can be at least a competent #1 goaltender that can be relied upon for about 45 to 50 games, doesn't have to put up the Vezina caliber stats, but just keep his save percentage in the 9-10s, goals against average just under 3 if possible. But yeah, just I want to see what Montembeault could do with a heavier workload, and we'll take it from there. But in terms of the Canadiens' depth that they have at goaltending in their organization, they have Caden Primo, of course, who is about to enter a playoff run with the Laval Rocket. He was unreal for them last year, but then went back to his somewhat inconsistent self this regular season with the Rocket and in his handful of appearances that he made at the Habs this year. But even if Caden Primo does not pan out, the Canadiens have actually built a decent amount of depth in terms of their goaltending prospect pool. I've been hearing a lot of really good things about Jakub Dobes, who's been playing for Ohio State. He has a save percentage of just under 920, goals against average around 2.3 this season. And yeah, just I'm really curious. He actually just signed his ELC, so he could be a really good prospect for the Habs. We'll see what he turns into. The rest are unsigned. Frederick Dikow has been in the organization for a couple of years now, still hasn't signed his ELC. Emmett Croteau was just drafted, I believe, last year, playing in the USHL this year. So again, still we'll see what he becomes. And then Joe Verbedic, who went between the Laval Rocket and Trois-Rivières Lions. So even though those three are unsigned, at least there's still some opportunity for them to prove themselves and maybe even earn that ELC. All in all, the Canadiens with their goaltending situation right now, they might not have that blue chip prospect like a Yaroslav Askarov or a Igor Shesterkin or Vasilevsky type of goaltender in their system per se, but they do have Sam Montembeault again, who we'll see if he can be an NHL #1 goaltender. And they have an interesting mix of prospects, which is why I have goaltending as my third biggest organizational need for the Habs. My second most dire need for the Montreal Canadiens is elite offensive talent at forward. Now, I debated on whether or not I should put this at 2 or 3 in front of or behind goaltending, and I decided that it is more of a dire need than goaltending because with the Canadiens and their current draft spot, if they fall out of the top 5, they'll still be in a position to draft a really great prospect, but there's obviously much less of a guarantee that that prospect will be an elite offensive forward compared to if they draft inside the top 5 or win one of the top 2 lottery spots. So I'm going to pull up the organizational depth that the Habs have at forward. Again, of course, there's Cole Caulfield, there's Kirby Dach, who really took a step forward this year. Nick Suzuki, that whole line, if they're together, if they're healthy, they're going to be dynamic and put up a lot of goals, put up a lot of points. But behind that, again, not much in terms of elite offensive talent. Maybe if you go down to the AHL or CHL levels, Joshua Roy has been really productive in the queue, but and he actually just recently signed his ELC finally, but he hasn't played in the AHL with the Rocket yet, and he definitely hasn't played in the NHL yet, so there's still questions there. Same thing with Riley Kidney, productive in the queue, but hasn't played much with the Laval Rocket yet, so we don't know what he's going to be like at the pro level. And same thing with Owen Beck, as I mentioned before. And of course, Sean Farrell, who played his first handful of NHL games this year. I think he's due for a good full season with the Laval Rocket, and we'll see what he does there. Farrell could turn into a productive middle 6 forward in the NHL, but just like Waugh and Kidney, it might be a little over ambitious to expect Farrell to become a true first-line winger in the NHL. And finally, my #1 most dire, pressing, organizational need for the Montreal Canadiens is the need for a top-pairing right-handed defenseman. I mean, just look at the Habs organizational depth chart on the blue line and how stacked it is on the left side compared to the right side, and how much NHL caliber talent or high-end talent is lacking on the right side. Caden Gooley, Jordan Harris, Arbor Jacki, Edmondson should be traded to make room for those 3 young left-handed defensemen to fight for spots on the second and third pairs, ideally. And then even in the AHL, I mean, you look at Gianni Fairbrother, Nicolas Baudin, Matthias Norlinder, William Trudeau. Very unproven at the NHL, of course, but at least they are there in the system as depth on defense and can be called up at any time if they end up getting thin on the left side, which will never happen based on, I mean, even with the amount of injuries they had this year, Fairbrother, Beaudin, Norlinder, and Trudeau couldn't really crack the lineup. So, but then on the right side, I mean, David Savard is a very fine veteran defenseman, but he should not be playing over 23, 24 minutes a game on a contending NHL team. He should be no more than a second pair defenseman. I really like Jonathan Kovacevic, what he ended up being this year. I really like Justin Barron's upside. Chris Weidman, not much more than a 7th, 8th defenseman. So, and then after that, like in terms of like in the pipeline after Chris Weidman on the depth chart, it's Logan Mailloux, and that's it. And Logan Mailloux is having a really good playoff run with the London Knights in the OHL. Obviously, there's the off-ice controversy, which I mean, it's important, it's relevant, of course. I've reacted to it in the past, but for the purposes of this video, just Mailloux at this point, in terms of who he is as a player, a lot of upside. He could turn into that second pair or first pair defenseman, but he has a lot of work I think he still needs to do to get there. But outside of that, I mean, there's literally nothing unless they reach for Reinbacher. I just don't see a way of the Canadiens being able to address it unless they make a trade or unless they throw a lot of money at a free agent either this offseason or next offseason. But that's all for this video, so let me know in the comment section what you think the biggest and most dire needs for the Montreal Canadiens are in terms of their organization going forward. I'm also very pleased to announce that this week I just hit over 400 subscribers to this channel. Really appreciate the support and the interaction when I've been posting. I know I've been on and off just because of different commitments that I've had in the last couple of years building my professional career. But thanks again so much for the support. I have some really interesting ideas for this channel and I really look forward to being able to implement them. And on that note, you know what to do. Hit like, hit subscribe, give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Mike Langer for both. And thank you so much again for watching. I'll see you again next time.